When the world looks different, security should too. From no-contact secure entries to over-the-air credentialing, streamlined visitor management, and occupancy control and social distance monitoring. HID Global's touchless solutions help you protect your people and their people. Learn more at hidglobal.com/touchless.
Hi, and good afternoon, and welcome to today's IFSEC Strat Talk, where we'll be discussing the future of access control in the security industry. We hear current trends, challenges, and future opportunities in the sector. Thank you to HID Global for sponsoring today's discussion, which is broadcast by IFSEC, part of Informa Markets. I'm Chris Edwards, Group Director at Informa Markets, and I'll be introducing and moderating today's session. Just a few things to note before we get started. This webinar is designed to be interactive, so please do ask any questions that you have and would like answered by panelists in the Q&A box towards the top right of your screen. We've got several items for discussion already on the agenda in the early stages, but we've left plenty of time towards the end of the session for audience questions. So please don't be shy. If you've got anything to add, then please do pop it into that box. But please just make it clear if the question is directed at a specific panelist, just so I know who to pose the question to. Questions come through directly through to myself, and they won't appear for anyone else to see. So if you submit a question and don't see it appear in the box, don't be alarmed, it is on its way. For a bit of context, much of the discussion today will revolve around questions and themes that came out of a survey that IFSEC undertook earlier this year, where we received feedback from several key vendors in the sector, where they saw the industry headed, why, and what this might mean to security professionals. The answers have been summarised in an exclusive ebook, which is available for you to download free as part of joining this webinar, which you can find in the PDF attachments. It's on the left-hand side, available to download on the screen that you're looking at. Please just be sure to open this in a new window if you want to have a look during the discussion, so that you're not directed away from the webinar itself. Lastly, if you're facing any sort of technical issues, then please just type any issues into the chat box, and one of the technical team will be on hand to support you. And if you want to watch the webinar back, if you have any internet problems and need to watch it on demand, don't worry, it will be available throughout June. This session is being recorded, so feel free to log back on anytime in June or catch up between meetings on the platform to watch it at your leisure. I'm delighted to be joined by today's panel, each of whom can provide their own unique thoughts and expert insights into access control. You can find out more about their roles in the bios if you scroll down on the left-hand side of your screen, but I'll just allow them to introduce themselves and then we'll get going. First up, we've got John Davies, who's the Managing Director of TDSi and is here representing the BSIA. John, can you just introduce yourself? You're on mute, John.
There's always one, isn't there? Yeah, so I'm here with my BSIA hat on today. So I'm the chairman of the Access Control and Asset Protection section for the BSIA, and I was voted as chairman this year. I've been involved with the access control industry since 2003. And in 2005, I bought TDSi from Norbain. So I've been involved in the industry for sort of 16, 17 years, and been doing a lot of work, managing transition from the technology trends through that time, and also pushing our company overseas. But now with the BSIA, very much involved with the BSIA on the technical standards side of things, and how that's moving.
Thanks, John. And next we've got Dave Roscoe, who's Field Operations Manager for the SSAIB. Hi, Dave. Do you want to give a little bit of your background?
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. As Chris said, I'm the Field Operations Manager with the the SSAIB, which stands for the Security Systems and Alarms Inspection Board, for those who don't know of us. I've been in the electronic security industry for approximately 37 years. I might not look it, but I have. Joined SSAIB back in 2008. Primarily my side of the organisation is the electronic section, although the SSAIB do deal with security services, i.e. the man guarding side, etc. as well.
Thanks, David. And next up, we've got Matt Haynes, European Distribution Business Manager, Physical Access Control Solutions for HID Global. Hi, Matt.
Hi, Chris. Good afternoon, everybody. Great to be here virtually. So, yeah, I've been in the access control industry now for around 25 years. Started off actually making physical credentials on a factory floor in Cambridge for a company called Cotag International. And since then, I've worked and held various management positions for kind of Be-Water, Siemens Security Products, and more recently Vanderbilt. I've been at HID now for around 4 years. Firstly looking after the UK Ireland team, and more recently moved into a European distribution role where we've launched a new partnership program and business channel. So yeah, great to be here.
Thanks, Matt. And Bryan, we've got Bryan Montany, Senior Analyst, Access Control Intelligence Service at Omdia. Bryan, can you say hello?
Hello, everyone. Hi, Chris. And good morning to everyone like me based in the United States and North America, and good afternoon to Europe. It's great to be here today. So I started my career actually as an attorney, but quickly transitioned to writing market research, first for IHS Markit back in 2017, and then we transitioned to Amdia in 2019. I started my career with IHS Markit covering actually smart buildings and commercial building systems domains from a energy perspective. So building automation equipment, HVAC equipment. And in 2019, I transitioned to my current role as the leader of the Access Control Intelligence Service. So I write a lot about the equipment we'll be discussing today.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Bryan. And finally, we have Daryl Gilmour, Director of Technical Training at Skills for Security. Daryl, can you give a bit of an introduction for yourself?
Hi, everybody, and thanks again, Chris. So I've been in the industry for approximately 11 years, from installer to design to sales. And then most recently, I started to move into the training side of the industry. Really got a grasp and a keen insight, a keen interest for training the next generation for engineers, and really trying to push for that skill within the UK market to start to thrive. And my most recent venture, just as of recent, the last couple of weeks, I've joined Skills for Security as the Director of Technical Training. My goal with Skills for Security is to try and grow both the commercial and apprenticeship training over the UK, trying to get that different quality that our competitors don't yet provide, try to upskill upcoming engineers, and also trying to make sure that the engineers currently in market and currently in the UK are the best that they can possibly be.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Daryl. So as you can see, we've got a lot of experience and a lot of different backgrounds coming to this. So if you do have any questions, then as I say, please feel free to ask. Just where I wanted to start was one of the points that came out of the report I mentioned earlier, which is around biometrics. And I think as we start to kind of try to imagine a post-COVID world, there are a lot of benefits that we can see from something like biometrics, but presumably this was a trend that was already on the rise for access control. Bryan, I just wondered if you could give us a bit of an overview on where the industry, what the stats are saying.
Absolutely. So when we think about biometrics in physical access systems, these days especially, I like to think of it as divided between the more conventional touch-based fingerprint access biometric readers and scanners versus new contactless, frictionless technologies like facial recognition which of course is the most exciting trend in the biometric space today, but we also have iris recognition readers and some other technologies as well. When I look at the top level numbers, just globally, what really sticks out to me is that we project conventional touch-based fingerprint readers. That market is actually beginning to decline. And that decline actually started during the pandemic year in 2020. The fingerprint market overall is still going to very slightly grow, but that's largely due to a few new frictionless fingerprint technologies that have been rolled out in the past half decade. By contrast, when we think of facial recognition readers, for example, that market is exploding. It's going to experience over 20% growth year over year over the next 5 years. And really that is the future for biometrics and physical access systems. So yeah, that's kind of the starting point in terms of a broader discussion about biometric readers, is just that we're seeing this transition away from the conventional fingerprint technologies that, you know, conventionally made up 70–80% of the total market size, into these newer technologies like facial recognition and iris recognition that have become more accurate over time. And as the accuracy has improved, I think the other benefits for facial recognition, the ability to process more entrants more quickly, and the contactless, frictionless nature of the technology so that it's more hygienic, for example, all of those benefits will lead to the rise in those technologies in the future.
Thanks, Bryan, and some pretty impressive growth there. And John, considering that BSIA, apologies, are presumably seeing more of this in your world.
Yeah, a lot of our members, whether they be manufacturers of access control systems or security systems installation companies, they're doing an awful lot more in the facial space. But fingerprint isn't entirely dead, as Bryan was saying, because prior to the pandemic, you had companies like Idemia introduce their Morpho Wave product, where you actually just wave your hand across the sensor and they could capture the fingerprint data, or they do capture the fingerprint data that way. So I think fingerprint isn't entirely dead, but there's a lot more aversion amongst customers and systems engineering companies to introduce contact-based systems these days.
Thanks, John. And David, just coming to you next from the SSAIB.
Yeah, we've noticed slight increase in the use. I can't say a great deal. An awful lot of the companies that we provide certification for are the smaller SMEs. So I think this kind of technology is more used in the larger scale installations. But it is certainly coming into our everyday auditing experience.
Thanks. And Matt, is this something that you're seeing more products go into?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, there's always that trade-off, isn't there, between biometric and traditional credential-based technologies in terms of security and speed and convenience to provide the right solution. But certainly, you know, I agree with some of the comments in general about fingerprint. But I think on a broader theme, you know, biometrics is going down this sort of this route towards a utopian of seamless and frictionless access control. And this is underlined, I think there's a news article on the IFSEC website regarding HID's investment into a company called Paravision, who are leading the way with AI technology in terms of say secure and seamless sort of facial recognition identification. This is the direction we generally see the market leading towards, especially for high-end applications over the next 5 years or so.
Thanks. And finally, Daryl, are you seeing a sort of change in training requirements considering biometrics?
Yeah, I mean, it's starting to drip through into the training side of things, especially commercial side. Yeah, I would imagine HID, TDSi, and the likes are very busy in trying to promote their own products and how they would use and how they would be integrated. And we are starting to see apprenticeships and apprentices starting to ask these kind of questions within class, and it's forcing us as a training provider, and it will be seen across the UK as well, to become better at what we do, having that thought-provoking conversation of, well, we look at entrance doors and access points, and they're breeding grounds for disease, not just COVID, but I think post-COVID, the way that we look at things will be completely different. The way that we look at solutions and how we implement things will be different to the way we do them now. And the training requirements are certainly starting to begin from the apprenticeship side, where the apprentices that are coming to us and we're training them up and giving them that inside knowledge in the manufacturing training, especially with the biometrics, end up becoming the only engineers within their company that know how to work and operate these systems. So it's certainly becoming something that's a lot bigger from the training point of view. It's exciting, it's interesting, it keeps our jobs continually evolving. But yeah, it's definitely starting to boom.
Thanks. One of the other things that was quite prevalent in the reports was the rise of mobile phones as a sort of interacting with access control. And again, this is something that seems to have been a sort of trend that's been around for a while, but perhaps been accelerated ever so slightly. Matt, just coming to you first on this one. I mean, is this something that that you're embracing at HID Global?
Yeah, you know, Chris, we've seen some huge growth in the mobile space. The digital transformation in that credential space has been quite dramatic over the last couple of years. I mean, there's obviously key benefits, you know, increased security, environmental impacts. You know, people can't travel to pick up plastic cards anymore. You know, so and of course, online technology, you know, means a user will get a better product. You know, they receive updates, device agnostic, and as the product evolves, you know, and so will the user experience. And the interesting point that we've seen as well is this sort of, I think the report calls them sort of master integrators, that you come across to it later on, where, you know, a lot of mobile solutions have reciprocating APIs and SDK packages available that allow for a complete system integration, not just at the security space, but maybe more in smart building environments. So we see a lot of new entrants into the marketplace who are taking mobile technology, really embracing that, building their own apps, you know, using that for other means to get around a smart building. So it's quite an exciting future.
Okay. And Bryan, does this create any sort of challenge, do you think, with security manufacturers then really having to keep track of what's happening within the mobile phone industry?
Well, I'll start with kind of an overview of mobile credentials, what that market looks like, because my controversial take overall, potentially controversial take on mobile credentials, is that I don't see the mobile credential trend, though it is the fastest growing product type in access control today. I don't see it as a technology that will displace traditional physical credentials so much as what we're going to see from vendors is an uptake in terms of readers designed to handle both physical and mobile credentials. The hybridization in the sense of the technologies, the acceptance of multiple technology types with credential technologies is where I see this market headed. In general, mobile credentials globally, it's a market that will be growing 60% year over year over the next 5 to 10 years, which is incredibly impressive, though it's starting from a comparatively slow or a comparatively low total size. But when I look at the growth potential for mobile credentials, I think the overarching narrative is really one where it's going to be introduced increasingly as an option. And from a vendor perspective, you're going to be at an extreme disadvantage if your readers, for example, are totally incompatible with mobile credentials. But in terms of displacement, I've heard theories that, for example, in the next 5 or 10 years, mobile credentials will totally displace physical credentials. And I would personally push back on that based on my conversation with vendors. It doesn't really seem like demand from end users has reached that point. End users still generally are requesting both physical and mobile credentials, and entrants generally like to have the option to use either or both when entering facilities.
Thanks, Bryan. John, I can see you nodding along, agreeing with Bryan there.
Yeah, we feel and agree with Bryan there. We don't see, mobile is growing very, very quickly. And I think mobile is very, very well versed to take advantage of enhancing user experience in different verticals. So, for example, in the sort of co-working environment, the WeWorks, the Regises of the, so it's using your mobile phone to enter the office, to go into the boardroom that you booked for an hour, and using that one credential, to be able to do that and have that credential valid for half a day, 5 days, however long you book the office space for. And we see also a lot of demand for sort of rental accommodation, sort of Airbnb type things, sort of moving away from the little master lock safe on the outside of a rental accommodation. We actually just sort of send the renter, okay, here's your access credential. I'm working with the BLE enabled smart locking products, battery operated smart locking products, that sort of thing. And also the whole idea of ensuring that we're moving into a realm where the readers actually have to do more than just read one technology. So if we look at the card-based credentials, 125 kilohertz procs, that's dying. It's not secure. It's easily cloned. So people are moving more onto the MyFair side of things. They'll use the mobile credentials because it is more secure. But there are a lot of readers out there now that will read a smart card, talk to a phone. They'll even read QR codes as well. So you have the sort of 3 or 4 technologies within a reader. Now the problem is, of course, that the more technologies you put into a reader point, the price point goes up. So when you're designing a system, you have to make sure that you fit the right reader type, depending on the location and the use case for the end user.
Hi, John. And David, John describes there a multitude of different applications here. Does that mean opportunity for installers and for integrators?
I think it does. I know we're here focused on access control, but from my experience, we deal with video surveillance systems, with intruder systems, and all these different security applications are now progressing to have the smartphone to interact with it, to arm and disarm the system, to interrogate it, to upload, and so the end user, of course, doesn't want one bit of technology to operate his access system and another bit of technology to operate his CCTV or BSS, as it's called now, an intruder system. So we can only see the use of mobiles increasing, probably due to the end users' benefits and the drive from the end user as much as from the manufacturer.
Thanks, David. And again, Darrell, just thinking about the training requirements, if you're talking about everything being mobile connected, or certainly that being important, is that a whole different type of technology for people to get their heads around?
I would say so. The thing I think is great about it, the flexibility with mobile credentials, being able to remotely provide someone with authorization, partition that authorization, and then revoke it without having to leave your desk. It removes that need for having to write, I've left your card at reception with Betty. As long as you can pick that card up before Monday, you'll get into the office. So it removes that laborious process. And yeah, absolutely. I think there's definitely going to be a lot more training involved, but I don't think so much that it'll be hard to get a head around. Everybody nowadays has apps for everything. As David had said, it's you've got applications for VSS, you've got applications for your intruder alarms, and to be able to build that into one application, or being able to integrate them into one application for kids nowadays, especially, it's something that they're already doing on a day-to-day basis. Granted, it's different with regards to what we do and how access control systems work and the protocol and the process behind it. I do think that there will be challenges in trying to promote this through our change, especially through the educational side. But I don't think it'll be anything that will be difficult to teach. More so the setup on how to get the access control system onto a network so that it can communicate with that mobile, those mobile credentials, or being able to talk to each other, talk to a database, and talk to the mobile phone. But all in all, I think it's a great thing to see coming up. I've always thought about it. Going back when I was an engineer, and I actually think it was an HID reader that we had in our offices going back 10, 11 years ago. And I can remember, had a smartphone, pressed it against the reader, and it came up to say, service not yet in use. And I can remember getting pretty excited about it as a young engineer, thinking, imagine being able to unlock your door with a telephone. And I think there's a selling point to it. It's very gimmicky, and customers like gimmicky, especially when you go down the route of Airbnb and that kind of rented accommodation. I think it's got its place, and I think it can be very useful.
Thanks, Darrell. One of the points again that came out of this was thinking about connected buildings and access control, often acting them as the kind of trigger points for a wider set of technology. And John, just coming to you, I just wonder whether that then raises the importance of access control as a component in a system like that.
I think for a long time now, people have begun to realize that the access control system is actually at the core of understanding where people are in the built environment and how they're actually interacting with that built environment. And if you can take that data and use that data, and more importantly, learn from the patterns that data is throwing up, then that will enable you to make buildings more efficient. So yeah, we're moving from the days when you had integration between an access control system and a lift control system, where you presented your card to the lift and it will only allow you to go to a few doors. Now you're actually interacting with a reader in the lift lobby, and it'll tell you which lift that you need to go to, which is the next one that's going to take you to your floor. Now that is that interaction and that use case is being driven by governments across the world basically telling building owners, you need to lower your carbon footprint. We're going to have an A to F rating on your building, depending on how efficiently you use technology and what your carbon footprint is. So if you wanted to get involved with an access control project in the United States, for example, and your access control system didn't interact with the lift destination control system seamlessly, you won't be able to offer your system into that marketplace. So knowing where people, allowing people to be in the building, where they can go, and when they are in the building, where are they in that building, will enable us to interface with the heating, ventilation, lighting systems. And not only that, I mean, we've worked with customers where you might have a large organization that's got a subcontract IT provider, and they're renting 100 PCs in an office. And they've got all the Microsoft licenses and goodness knows what else on top of that. But they might not know, or whether or not those PCs are 100% occupied. So they're paying for a resource that they might not need. And we've actually worked with systems integrators where we've gone to the end user and said, look, you are spending a 7-figure sum on IT support contracts. If you knew how many people were actually using the PCs at any given time, we can prove to you that we could save you a significant 5 or 6-figure sum. So when you're going into an organization like that, it's like that you can spend money on technology, but spend money on technology that's going to show you how you can save money somewhere else. And this whole efficiency thing is driving it. It's the plus alpha in the security sale. It's taking the security sale and security business from a grudge purpose to, I can help you save money. I can help you be a lot more efficient.
Hi, Sean. And Brian, you mentioned in your intro your backgrounds with regards to smart buildings. Again, just thinking about access control within that overall ecosystem, what's your view?
So yeah, just to build a little bit off of what John was talking about earlier, definitely data relating to occupancy levels in buildings, that's really the primary driver of what smart building technology, what smart building applications can do for building owners. But I think in the shorter term, if we're thinking more about the next 5 or 10 years, as opposed to more broadly about future use cases for smart buildings and building management system platforms, I think in the short term, it's really going to be driven predominantly by energy costs. When I studied smart buildings, what really stuck out to me is that there are tremendous potential use cases with that occupancy data that smart building platforms can already make possible. There's already potential savings, there's already potential features that would be tremendously beneficial, for example, for an entrant into an office building. For example, if you scan your badge to enter your office building and say it's midnight as opposed to regular working hours, the building can guide you to the specific part of the office where you work via lighting, and only turn on the lights that you need, only turn on the HVAC system that you need to cool the specific area around your space. There are tremendous potential savings there, and I think that cost benefit analysis, especially among private enterprise level end users, it's really going to be what energy efficiency can we achieve through smart building technologies. Unfortunately, in the past, the answer has conventionally been not enough savings to necessarily justify investing in some of the more tremendous smart building applications, which has limited in the past the most exciting technological applications to what I call lighthouse projects. A few like Silicon Valley projects here in the United States, a few projects in cities like Amsterdam or London, maybe in Europe, that are a little bit ahead of the curve compared to most other buildings. So yeah, in the short term, it's really going to depend on what are costs going to look like for building owners. Will the cost of energy be driven up to such an extent that it really becomes a much more compelling case for end users to invest in these kind of advanced analytics?
Thanks, Brian. And one of the, when talking about connected buildings and any sort of growth in smart buildings, one of the things that the report talks about is potentially the rise of what we call the master systems integrator, someone who genuinely understands the worlds of security, HVAC, lighting, et cetera, Daryl, I just wonder whether you think you're likely to see any security professionals really wanting to grasp hold of this opportunity and then looking at actually brushing up skills that perhaps go beyond the traditional security sphere.
In all honesty, I think we'd be stupid not to. It's not something that we've been looking at as of late, but it begs the question, should we be? And it is one of those things that it does take it above and beyond any normal security system installer application. It is something that isn't going to be taught over 2 or 3 years. That right after that, there's a certificate now. You're a master integrator. Go away into London and set up a smart city. I don't think it's going to be a quick enough turnaround for that. But I certainly think that we could be a starting point where, whether we build on or bolt on a separate training or separate courses that's accredited, that then at least gives those engineers that footing and awareness of, right, this is another arm and leg that spurs off of the security sector. And it does, in my opinion, it does sit separately. It's not the same as going in and putting an intruder alarm system in. And I think David will be the same. I don't know how you would potentially go in and audit that type of system, especially from a normal installer's point of view. There will need to be advanced training put in place, and I think it would be stupid not to really push into that market, especially as an early stage, whether we can then lead on to HID or TDSi, or there's some sort of partnership there where we feed into, or we get some sort of training partnership set up with you guys, and we give them the base knowledge of how a mastering integrator, what it is, what would be involved, and how these how the engineering of the analytics actually bolt onto the access control system. Where and why do we put them into certain areas, and how we can have a smart building and smart cities run by an access control system.
Thanks, Darrell. And just Matt, if I come to you just with your vendor hat on, can you just give us a bit of background on how HID are approaching connected buildings?
So yeah, we see it from a couple of plays really. So obviously going back to the mobile piece, we're seeing that as a great hook in. And we did a project in the city recently where the facility manager on the building said actually the access control on the mobile phone was a really good hook into the smart building, because the end user had to take their phone out at least twice a day to get into the building and then come out of the building. And so having that phone in the hand and the app gave the audience the ability to be able to see news in the building. You understand where they're going to go, what floors are operable, etc., etc. So it allows that. We also see solutions coming down the track, and we have available where you can actually leverage the person's movement in the building to build up a heat map effectively to understand how much of the building is being utilized. And so this is critical for you looking in the corporate real estate arena where the owners of the buildings want to leverage their investment to their tenants. And they can understand, I've got 3 meeting rooms for 10 people. Is it really being utilized? Are 10 people using these? Who's moving around? Where's the densely populated parts of the building? And how can that be utilized better? It's utilizing space better. We saw an application last year, and the end user said to us that they pay a consultant a lot of money to go and count people sitting at desks. But I think technology has moved on from that. And certainly access control is the first point of entry into a building, and to be able to understand how people move around that building with open architecture, APIs, SDKs available now. I think a lot of manufacturers are coming to market with that full integrated toolkit to allow a third-party developer to take this, these applications on board and build out a complete solution, where in the past it was quite theoretical and reliant on other people to come up with the glue in the middle. But we see this as a great play in the next 5 years and onwards.
Thanks, Matt. We've had a question come in around open protocols. How important are open protocols in access control systems for integrations and possible? John, can you take that one? John, I think you're on mute, sorry.
So the space bar is not working. Yeah, I think open protocol is becoming more and more important within the access control world. Yeah, 10, 15 years ago, every access control system manufacturer had sort of proprietary protocol-based software development kits that could be licensed to other vendors to write integrations, and the methodology or the time that it took to learn these proprietary protocols to then integrate into two different systems. It took an awful lot of time. So moving more towards open protocols using REST API, which is a universal protocol to allow systems to talk to each other, and with the onset of what OMVIF are doing. So OMVIF have done a lot of work in the CCTV space with Profile-S and what have you, and they've introduced open protocols or standard protocols into the access control space as well. Now, that hasn't been taken up too quickly yet by access control vendors. I think Axis do, but I think there's a couple of Chinese access control manufacturers are actually starting to look at these open protocols, and that I think we've got a danger of those manufacturers trying to steal a march on the traditional access control industry, just as they did in the CCTV industry. So I think open protocols are good from a systems integration, an integrator's point of view, from the end user's point of view, because it allows systems to be plug and playable and to talk to each other. But what it will force is that manufacturers of traditional access control systems will need to sort of hone their skills and be good at what it is that they're doing in order to attract business, rather than trapping customers. They need to start attracting customers.
Thanks, John. We've got another question actually come through, which is around data security. So where does the panel see the use of always-on WebSocket tech and blockchain as the ID master mechanisms? John, if I come back to you, do you have an answer to that?
Off the top of my head, the blockchain is very, very interesting. This is a technology that's sort of moving from government space and from credentials within the banking industry, and leveraging that technology to have an always viable credential that is totally secure, that goes with you everywhere. It's not really taken up too much within the access control industry at this moment in time, but if you say over the next 5 years we'll be moving that way, absolutely.
Thanks, John. Just coming back to the open protocol question, because I imagine that's got some ramifications for installers. Dave, how are you seeing that?
It's been a long-standing problem with different technologies talking to each other. I think one area in the security industry as a whole, which may prove difficult, is where you try to integrate with intruder systems. I think access and CCTV or VSS, fine with open protocol, can talk to each other quite happily. However, when you try to integrate with a building intruder alarm system, specifically one that requires police response, there are quite specific prescriptive standards that the intruder standards need to comply with, and that's always a bit of a problem for the integrator to talk to intruder systems which may need to be armed in a specific way that's governed by standards. VSS, and access, not too much of a problem. But when you start getting to intruder systems, as I say, specifically for police response, they're quite prescriptive standards in the intruder arena. So that's a problem we see regular when we come across installers who are trying to bring all the security systems together into one building management system.
Thanks, David. We've had another question come in, going back to the biometrics, which is just been asked whether actually building occupiers would have concerns with storing that kind of data. Matt, I don't know whether HID have a view on the storing of biometric data.
Yeah, so predominantly we would suggest from a secure standpoint using the ANSI protocol would be to store the biometric on your secure credential, rather than storing that actually inside an edge device or something considered could be vulnerable. But certainly there is enough governance and standards-based approach now with the storage of biometrics. I know there's certain countries in Europe which has their own legislation surrounding the deployment of biometrics, but in general terms, we would see biometric being used with a template being stored on card, and then a secure ELL 5+ or common criteria rated module to handle the secure transaction between the reader and then the access control platform.
Thanks, Matt. Just going back to the report for a second, one of the other things that was mentioned was access control as a service. And I think there was still some surprise, or it hasn't quite taken over, I think, as a kind of preferred model. What are the barriers, or what do you think needs to change for this to be adopted more widely? Bryan, I don't know if I can come to you on this.
Absolutely. I have written extensively earlier this year on access control as a service, and I think to summarize, access control as a service and more broadly, cloud-based solutions and cloud-based software in these access control systems. That market is growing, and it is growing pretty robustly. We project at Amdia that it will continue to grow more than twice as fast as the market for on-premises software. But even though the growth story is significantly higher, there's greater potential there. We're not seeing that really substantial displacement where access control as a service is really expected to replace the conventional on-premises approach in the next decade as the predominant approach or the predominant architecture. And I think the single biggest barrier why is that it's really going to be constrained by different vertical markets. There are simply different types of end users, different types of building owners, and different types of facilities that will find the access control as a service model very compelling versus a lot of enterprise level end users, especially very large commercial buildings, very large institutional buildings, where potential trade-offs in regards to cybersecurity, potential vulnerabilities there, even the perception of cybersecurity vulnerabilities. There's a bit of a debate as to whether or not cloud-based approaches actually are any more or less insecure than the conventional on-premise approach to the storing of data. But independently of where the truth lies there are different perceptions that different end users have. I think that's a major barrier, lack of education regarding the potential benefits, and simply the fact that if you already have an on-premise system in an existing building, you will probably choose to retain that architecture as opposed to converting everything to a cloud-based alternative. So long story short, there is a pretty substantial growth potential for cloud-based software and cloud-based architectures. It's just not going to be something where 10 years from now, we're going to look back and say, wow, this has really become the dominant, more than 50% of the market share. kind of architecture.
Thanks, Brian. Matt, I can see you nodding along. Just as Brian was talking about some of the benefits of this approach, what would you say to occupiers as reasons why they should adopt this?
Well, it's one of those things, I'm sure John would agree as well, spending many years trying to convince people to change an access control system. It's inherently difficult for an end user to change an access control system. It's an ongoing challenge that every access control manufacturer has, as to why, it's not like changing a camera or a monitor where you can visually see the benefit right in front of you on a screen or, as a picture on a recording. So it's difficult. So it's changing that mindset about the cloud solutions being part of a trusted environment in terms of the ongoing security. And many still believe that an on-premise solution is more secure. I think that mindset is changing. And I think technology companies, probably even more in that sort of middle SMB middle space of the marketplace, will adopt these solutions. And I take Brian's point totally for the enterprise level, where there is more interaction between other business systems outside the security space. It will be harder for the end user to leverage the benefit for them to adopt it. But I definitely see it growing for more of the SMB space.
Thanks, Matt. We've got 10 minutes remaining. So, John, I was just going to come to you for sort of any final thoughts from your side of things, and particularly the next couple of years and how you see us sort of move from this place of dealing with something as huge as a pandemic to getting back to some sort of sense of normality. Thinking with access control in mind, how quickly do you think things are going to change, or do you think it's going to be a sort of going back to the same pace of change that we were experiencing beforehand?
I really feel that what the pandemic has done has brought people to realize that there were contactless access control technologies that existed before the pandemic came along. It's just that this pandemic has actually sort of forced people to think, actually, yeah, I can actually use that technology now. I was kind of aware of it, but now I'm a lot more aware of it. And I think with the whole, with end users looking at occupancy control and occupancy management and better use of the built environment, and wanting to understand, as other contributors have said, is that, how have I got more meeting rooms than I need? How do I really find out? So people are going to be adopting and using access control technology for what it was always capable of doing, which is providing this occupancy data, rather than just using it to open and close doors securely. And control access through various doors. So people are going to be thinking, and are thinking, about the use case. People are going to have as their first thought, what pain am I trying to take away from my organization? What is it that I don't know that I'd like to know in order to do something about it? And the previous comments just now about access control as a service, that's growing very, very quickly. It's not going to displace existing systems very, very quickly. So it's mostly for sort of smaller organizations, greenfield type of opportunities. But then any end user who is capital constrained but has got a good operations budget. So for me, that screams schools. And it's not just schools for the coronavirus, but schools for protecting children, wherever they are, whether it's Nigeria and school children being kidnapped, or some school children in some parts of the world being shot at. People are going to want to use technology to provide a safer and more secure environment.
Thanks, John. We've just had one last question come in, which I think will sneak in. Matt, if I can put this to you, this is just a question asking whether anyone's seeing an increase in integrating physical and logical network access control to limit false online logins with the increase in home working. And I guess that home working aspect, which is we all think is going to be with us now for some time is creating more challenges, I presume.
Yeah, I think just to go to John's point before, I think business will need to, when things get back to what we call the new normal, business will need to sort of have a step back and breathe a little bit and understand how they're going to operate moving forward. Offices which were staffed Monday to Friday 9 till 5, that won't be the case in an awful lot of cases. We're seeing 3, 4, 5 day week working from home. So, we're seeing some customers who are not going back until mid 2022. And so the link between physical and logical access control is key, really. And it sort of goes full circle back almost to the mobile piece, where you can deploy a mobile credential. I can send one to you or anybody else in the audience right now, and I know it's a trusted, secure method of delivering a card for you. So when you go into the office, it's valid, it's active, it will work. Whereas if it's a plastic credential, how many times people giving their colleagues a plastic credential to go through a door? How can you verify it's them? And this is where, in a very simplistic form, mobile actually bridges that gap quite nicely. And we're seeing more and more of that.
Thanks, Matt, and thanks to all the panelists that have joined us today. That's all the time I think we've got for questions. But I think you can all agree it's been a really good discussion and a lot of expert views there. If you'd like to know more about further trends and challenges in access control, then as I said to you from the start, don't forget to download that free ebook, which you can see in your window now. I'd like to thank our sponsor, HID Global. And for those of you that would like to know more about them or to connect directly, in the portal that you're looking at now, if you click on the exhibitor tab, you'll be able to find a profile for HID Global, learn a bit more about them, and actually arrange some virtual direct meetings throughout the next few weeks. I'd also like to thank everyone in the audience and particularly for your questions. Within the next 24 to 48 hours, today's discussion should be available to watch back on demand on the IFSEC Connect platform. Please feel free to invite your colleagues and peers who may not have been available to listen to the events and get them involved in IFSEC Connect generally. We hope you enjoy all the other presentations and discussions that we've got planned for the rest of this month. Just to give you a flavour for that, we have another Strat Talk on IFSEC Connect tomorrow, talking about the future of intruder detection and alarms. And later in the month, we'll also be looking at protecting cities and public spaces. There's loads of exclusive product demonstrations from vendors going on, and also content from our other co-located shows covering health and safety, fire safety, FM, smart buildings, and workplace wellbeing. Finally, I'd also encourage you to utilise the platform as much as you have time for over the coming month. We hope it provides you with the first chance in a long time to connect with new suppliers and industry peers, or simply reconnect with those that you have long-standing relationships with already. All the meetings take place directly in the platform, so it's well worth keeping the tab open in your browser throughout June. But that's all from this session. Thank you everyone for your time and have a great day.